Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to Cinematic Reviews. As always, I will be your host, Chris, and this is a show about all things movies and TV. Well, we got another jam-packed episode for you on Marvel Friday. We're talking about Captain America Civil War, kicking off Phase 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's right, we are already in Phase 3. Super excited to be talking about this film. It's one of my favorite MCU and Marvel films of all time. It's got a lot of great action, great cast, great story. It's just an all around awesome movie. So I'm excited to finally get to Civil War within the MCU. We'll also talk about a bunch of reactions on today, and we'll get into all those rankings for the Marvel Friday shows. Before we get into all of that, though, a couple of reminders at the top of the episode. Of course, you can watch the show every week at youtube.com/the cinematic reviews. Now you can watch the episode as well on Spotify. So check out Spotify under cinematic reviews. And of course, you can listen to the audio version if that is your preferred way to listen to the show on your favorite podcast network like Spotify again, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. Also, follow the show on social media today on Facebook, X, and Instagram. I just posted about the unfortunate death of Miss Catherine O'Hara, one of the great legendary actresses of our time. So that is sad to see her go, of course, today at the age of 71. I also been posting some new artwork for every episode from the show. I just updated the Ready Player One artwork, which just came out earlier this week. So go ahead and check that episode out. Kicking off of our Gamerverse event here on the show. Super excited about that. And then we will be updating some of the Marvel thumbnails as well on the channel. Today will be the first Marvel episode with the new updated artwork. So go ahead and check that out as well on social media. With that, let's get into all those reactions today. We got 5 of them for you. It's going to be jam-packed. We're going to have a lot of fun today. So news and reactions. Yeah, like I said, we have 5 reactions. I kind of wanted to get back to what we used to do on the show where we do a stream blitz. We got 5 shows across various different streaming services. But before we get into all of those, like I said, the legendary actress Catherine O'Hara unfortunately passed away at the age of 71 in her Los Angeles home. It sounds like this was due to an illness that she was dealing with. Thoughts and prayers go out to her family, and all those closest to her. You can tell I'm a little bummed out today because I was not expecting to kick off the show today with a Catherine O'Hara death news breaking in Hollywood. It just broke a few hours before recording today's episode. So I'm going to do my best to be as cheerful as possible with one of my favorite movies ever. But this just sucks with her being gone. You know, she was such a huge part of my childhood with the 2 Home Alone movies that she did as Kevin McAllister's mother. She was in Beetlejuice as Winona Ryder's mother as well. And, of course, her resurgence in her career as Moira in Schitt's Creek. It sucks seeing her go, and she'll be greatly missed. We're going to do the Home Alone films, of course, on this podcast. Probably do those around Christmas time. And we will do the first Beetlejuice, which I don't think we've done on the show yet. I would love to do a Schitt's Creek review episode as well because I absolutely love that show. She was great on there as Moira, like I said. So tragic death in the Hollywood sphere. It's my childhood basically died with her, and it sucks to see her go. But it's good to know that she is probably in a better place. I would hope so. She was a very lovely woman and an incredible actress, and such a huge icon in the Hollywood sphere. So, again, thoughts and prayers go out to her family and those closest to her as they go through this very terrible time. But she will be greatly missed, and we'll have all of her movies and all her roles and her characters to enjoy for the rest of time. On to hopefully a little more joyful things on the show here. First up, we have our full reaction to Percy Jackson and the Olympians. This is the Disney Plus show. It is now finished up its season 2. I finally binged both seasons. I watched the first, I want to say, 2 episodes when season 1 first came out. Wasn't really a big fan of it. I've read a couple of the books. It's a book franchise that I was not really attached to as a kid. I did like the movies that they did with I believe it was Logan Lerman. Let me check this out here. Percy Jackson. Yep, Logan Lerman was the original Percy Jackson in the 2 movies I did it. I thought they were pretty good. They were entertaining and enjoyable. Yeah, they weren't great. They weren't the greatest movies on earth. But to be honest, no offense to all the Percy Jackson fans out there, the books weren't that enticing either. I can't even tell you how many books there are total. I do remember uh, reading The Lightning Thief in school. That's probably the one I remember the most, which season 1 is pretty much about, as well as the first movie, Percy Jackson. That was all about the Lightning Thief. I do like Walker Scobell, who is Percy Jackson in this iteration of the story. He is an actor that we've talked about a couple times on the show. Probably the Adam Project is where I've talked about him the most. I think he's pretty good as Percy Jackson. He's a young actor that I've slowly grown to love, uh, especially in the Adam Project, which we covered on the show. One of the first episodes on the show back in 2022. So go ahead and check that deep cut out in the cinematic archives if you are curious to see my thoughts on that. But as a whole, the show was pretty good. Season 1, I think I liked it better than the second one. It's tough. They're really close to me. Um, we'll see if season 3 can pick up a little bit, but I was not as entertained with season 2 as I was with season 1, probably because I'm more familiar with the Lightning Thief story than I am with the Sea of Monsters story in this franchise. But it was an enjoyable show for me to actually sit down and be entertained enough to watch both seasons. Season 1, I'm giving it 3 popcorn buckets on the popcorn rating, and I'm also getting season 2 3 popcorn buckets on the popcorn rating. You could probably tell with me giving it both ratings are really close, and it's hard to kind of distinguish one or the other. But if I were to rank one higher than the other one, I'd probably put season 1 above season 2. I like the action in there. I like the Lightning Thief story, which is about the Zeus being mad at the demigods at Camp Half Blood for somebody stole his master bolt, and it is assumed that Percy Jackson was a thief, but it turns out that it was actually Luke, who is the son of Ares, or not Ares, the son of Hermes, and then Ares himself was involved with stealing the master bolt in the end. And then Sea of Monsters, which is the second season, circles around Percy Jackson and his now fellow brother Tyson, who is also the son of Poseidon. They go on this quest to battle Luke and stop Kronos from basically destroying Olympus and all the gods, because he's pissed off that Zeus and his brothers basically annihilated Kronos back in the day to take over Olympus. Now he wants revenge, and he has recruited a lot of the demigods at Camp Half Blood to do his bidding, to destroy Olympus. So I do like season 1 a tad bit better, but Percy Jackson is still an enjoyable one. I'm going to watch season 3 for sure, just because I'm already committed to this story and I want to see how it ends. So check out Percy Jackson and the Olympians on Disney Plus today. Both season 1 and 2 are fully out for you to binge for sure. The next reaction I have is Fear Factor House of Fear. We are doing a revival of a show that I grew up watching back in the day, Fear Factor, which was originally hosted by Joe Rogan, and now it is being hosted by Johnny Knoxville, because who else than the Jackass star himself, Johnny Knoxville, to host a show called Fear Factor. This is on Fox, but I have been watching it on Hulu. So if you still watch channels for some reason, you can check this out on Fox every week. But it does stream on Hulu as well. I believe every Wednesday, I think, is what it does. But this is a crazy iteration of the Fear Factor show. They kind of taken the reality show route where they are all living in the same house for this span of time until they get one winner to win the grand prize. They are also kind of broken up into pairs of two at the beginning of this show, and then as people start to get eliminated, it starts to become more of a alliance and enemies type thing in this house. They do a lot of crazy different fear factor related games, like you have the mixed drink, which was disgusting, where you have this giant wheel of various like meats and other things like pig ears and livers and stuff like that. And then once you get that, you spin a smaller wheel for your liquids to make this mixed drink or smoothie. And they have things like pig's blood, fermented milk, and expired eggs and stuff like that. So it's really disgusting. On the newest episode that just came out a couple of days ago, the one of the games was to be buried in cement, and you have to work as a team to get these rods out of this cement that is drying up around you in time before you are basically buried alive by concrete in this hole. And then that leads into what they call the end game in the show, and it's a really cool setup where they start the first game where everybody is involved. Once they get a winner or a loser, then that winner gets a little sneak peek of what the end game would be, which is where they actually start eliminating people. And it's a really cool setup on how they do this. And the end game in this newest episode was pretty wild as well, where 4 people have to crawl through these glass boxes, swimming in the water with snakes, and then fighting off a lizard to get these dead rats in your mouth, carry them through again the lizard and then the pool of snakes, and drop the 4 rats out of the kind of container that you're in the fastest time possible. It's really crazy. Johnny Knoxville's great. You know, he's like encouraging the cast to perform these stunts and to face their fears to make this show entertaining and to show support. And I think Johnny Knoxville is a really good host on this show. I'm getting a kick out of it, and I'm curious to see what else they bring to the show in the coming episodes. So check out Fear Factor House of Fear on Hulu and Fox today. The next one is The Beauty, which is a pretty weird show. It is on FX and Hulu as well. This is the Ashton Kutcher show. Well, it's more of a Evan Peters show right now. Ashton Kutcher, I remember when the commercials were starting to come out, they really featured Ashton Kutcher as the main guy. But we've been seeing Evan Peters' character more. He plays Cooper, a FBI agent who has been tasked to solve this really crazy case of where people are exploding. I'm still piecing it together on what exactly this show is. It seems to be that some sort of virus that is spread by having sex with people and making people beautiful, like supermodel beautifuls. You know, there was one at the very beginning where this guy Jeremy, who is an overweight, very socially awkward guy, well, he ends up spending money to get plastic surgery. It's not exactly what he wanted. So then the place that he got the plastic surgery is like, okay, we have one more thing that you can try. Well, he ends up getting brought to this really nice hotel, and this strange woman comes in. They have sex, and then he ends up waking up in this cocoon, and he's a completely different person. Like, he is a beautiful supermodel guy, and it's all from this virus that is being sexually transmitted to these people and really altering their body chemistry and making them beautiful supermodels in the world. And it's insinuated that Ashton Kutcher's character is the one that started this all, and he is making this all this happen basically, and he's kind of the quote unquote, I guess, villain or antagonist to Evan Peters, who is investigating what the hell is going on. He's got people exploding in coffee shops. He has people exploding out in the open. It's just crazy. And now in this newest episode, it looks like his partner has become a victim to this virus, who is Rebecca Hall, who is always fantastic to see. So it's got a pretty decent cast. Anthony Ramos, who we've talked about on the show as well. in the Marvel universe now, and in the Transformers movie that we covered. He is kind of the assassin for hire for Ashton Kutcher as he's trying to eliminate loose ends so that nobody finds out what's really going on, because people are starting to have the side effects to this virus, ergo exploding out in public. So it's really too early to kind of understand fully what's going on. We're about, I think, 4 episodes in. The 4th episode just came out. I watched it before we started recording today. It's a pretty crazy show. If you're into sci-fi, weird shit, I guess is the best way to explain this show, check out The Beauty on FX and Hulu today. Next, we've got A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. This is the newest Game of Thrones spinoff on HBO. We have gotten 2 episodes so far, if I remember right. I've only seen 2 episodes, so if there's a third one out there, it is hiding from me. But these are airing on Sundays like HBO normally does with their big shows, especially the Game of Thrones ones. This centers around Sir Duncan the Tall and Egg, who is this little boy that Sir Duncan ends up running into on his way to the jousting tournament, where he is set to compete and win some glory. I really like the Sir Dunk character so far. He's very humble, very loyal. He believes in knights. He believes in the duties that the knights are to be tasked with. And it's a very interesting show. We haven't seen any of the jousting quite yet, but I have a feeling in this next episode, airing on Sunday, we'll get some pretty cool jousting actions. But I'm very excited to see the rest of this story. It's got some interesting characters in here. Like I said, the Sir Dunk character is really, really cool. I really like him so far. So check out A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, streaming every week on Sunday nights on HBO. And then our last reaction we'll talk about today is another HBO show. It is The Pit Season 2. So if you've seen the Cinematic Awards episode, you know that The Pit was a top 5 show last year. And now it looks like The Pit Season 2 may be another top 5 film this series this year. Season 2 centers around the 4th of July. So I think we are in for a real show here once, the fireworks start hitting and we get all these crazy injuries coming through the ER. If you are not familiar with the show or you haven't seen season 1, The Pit is a really, really cool show that has a unique setup where they have each episode blocked out in real time for an hour. So episode 1 is the first hour of the shift. Second episode is the second hour of the shift, and so on and so forth until we get through this entire 12-hour shift. It is really, really exciting. Noah Weil, who plays Dr. Robbie in here, he's fantastic. You probably recognize him from ER as Dr. Carter. He returns here as Dr. Robbie, and it's a really fascinating one. It shows you the real life situations that nurses and doctors deal with in these emergency rooms, especially these intensive care units. The Pit is what they call this particular emergency room in Pittsburgh. Season 1 had some crazy cases, and so far we're looking at possibly even more crazier with the 4th of July holiday. We have a lot of new characters as well, but most of them returning from season 1 as well, which is always great to see in like a universe building aspect. So I really love The Pit. The first 3 episodes I think are out, or at least 4. I think I'm in the middle of episode 4 right now, but I'm really, really loving it. So check out The Pit season 2 as it airs every week on HBO, and then go ahead, if you haven't yet, check out season 1. That is fully out on HBO as well. So that's going to do it for all of our reactions and our unfortunate news item that we had to talk about today. Let's take a quick break before we dive into our featured film, Captain America: Civil War. This episode is brought to you by Dubby Energy. Still drinking energy that quits before you do? Stop crashing, stop shaking, and start performing. Meet Dubby Energy, clean energy made for gamers, creators, and anyone who refuses to slow down. With zero sugar, no jitters, and no crash, W keeps you locked in whether you're grinding ranked, streaming for hours, or pushing through those late nights. There's no crash, no fade, just gas. Drink different, perform better. Grab W Energy and use code Cinematic10 to get 10% off your order today.
This job, we try to save as many people as we can. Sometimes that doesn't mean everybody. But you don't give up.
New York, Washington, D.C., Sokovia.
Okay, that's enough.
Captain, people are afraid.
That's why I'm here. We need to be put in check. Whatever form that takes, I'm game.
I'm sorry, Tony. If I see a situation pointed south, I can't ignore it. Sometimes I wish I could.
Sometimes I want to punch you in your perfect teeth.
I know we're not perfect. But the safest hands are still our own.
I was wrong about you. The whole world was wrong about you. They're coming for you.
I'm not the one that needs to watch their back.
This doesn't have to end in a fight, Tony.
You just started a war. Stay down. Final warning.
I could do this all day.
All right, I've run out of patience. On to roost!
Hey, everyone.
Captain America Civil War came out on May 6, 2016. This was the first film in the Phase 3 of Marvel Cinematic Universe. Looks like the budget was a whopping $250 million, but it did gross $1.1 billion. Massive, massive payday for the Russo brothers and everybody involved with this film. This was essentially another Avengers movie. Now, after watching it a couple times, I can see the Captain America movie hiding inside of this film, but a lot of people have just kind of branded this movie as the Avengers 2.5 because it's basically got almost the Avengers. You know, we don't have a Hulk, we don't have Nick Fury, we don't have Thor in here, but everybody else pretty much returns. We got Cap going up against Tony, which has been kind of brewing since that first Avengers film, and then it really kind of escalates out of control in Age of Ultron, and then now we get this aftermath, just kind of the last straw that broke the camel's back with the Sokovia Accords, which is the MCU's version of the Superhero Registration Act from the comics, which the comic book Civil War is centered around, and we'll dive into some of the big differences between the comic book and the film. But focusing on the film right now, it's centered around Tony and Cap butting heads about these Sokovia Accords. Tony is on the side of the Avengers need to be held in check. We need to obey these laws. We need to work with these governments in order to avoid, imprisonment, avoiding going up against, superpowers of the world, and just making things worse than they are. You had the catastrophe in New York in the first Avengers film. You had the Ultron bots being let loose upon the world in Sokovia during the Age of Ultron film. You have the first opening act of this film with going up against Frank Grillo's character Rumlow, and the explosion that happens in Lagos at the hands of Wanda, unfortunately, which kills a bunch of civilians. So Tony is under the belief that the Avengers need to be held accountable for all the destruction that they have caused, even though they have saved the world multiple times. But then, of course, you have Cap, who is like, I mean, the Avengers are its own thing. Like, what if we get a call that we don't agree with, or there's a mission that the government doesn't know about or doesn't see and that doesn't approve the Avengers to go do, even though deep down they know that they need to go do that. So it's a really cool way of, conflicting ideals. But at the end of the day, Tony and Cap want to do the same thing. They want to save the world. They want to do what's best for the Avengers. They just have two different paths that they're saying to go down based on what they believe is the right thing to do. And it's really cool how they've kind of built this up, and then now we get this catastrophe, as Vision says, with this civil war within the Avengers. But it wasn't just them. They had a little help with the villain of the movie, Baron Zemo, who we'll talk about more later on as we get to that villain scale and we talk about Daniel Bruhl's performance. But it was really cool that they kind of still needed a push in that direction to have this civil war. They weren't quite there until everything happens with Bucky and with the explosion at the UN meeting for signing the Sokovia Accords, and it just all kind of spirals out of control. Cap is just kind of treading water for a lot of the movies and just sticking to his guns, believing in what he thinks is the right thing to do. But then you have Tony on the other side of the aisle, where he's just heartbroken that Cap won't get off of his high horse and sacrifice a few things in order to preserve the Avengers. But Cap is willing to destroy the Avengers to do what he thinks is right, and that is protecting an innocent Bucky who is under the investigation for the explosion at the UN. But it turns out that it wasn't actually him. It was Zemo, and nobody can see it but Cap until the very end of the movie. So it's really, really good storytelling. It's really got a lot of really good action in here. All the cast involved is at the peak of their powers with their characters. It's so cool to see everybody on screen together. You have Paul Rudd from the Ant-Man part of the universe now joining with the Avengers. You have Anthony Mackie's Sam Wilson, who has been, Cap's, best partner within all this. Now he is fully implemented into the Avengers. You have Wanda, you have Vision, you get introduced to two new characters, Spider-Man and Black Panther, who are massive characters in the Marvel Comics, particularly Spider-Man. And it's really cool to see him now finally interacting with the Avengers on the big screen after having, 5 movies before with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. And now he's finally on screen next to Cap, Iron Man, Ant-Man, Black Panther. Is just really, really cool. And in 2016, when they announced that Spider-Man would finally be on screen with the Avengers, it blew everybody's mind, including me, because he is my favorite superhero, and I've been waiting forever for him to be working with the Avengers on screen instead of just being in his own solo films. So it's really, really awesome as a Spider-Man fan to finally see that. And then, of course, for the Black Panther fans, to finally see him get a live-action version of him. And it's great. Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace to him. He is a phenomenal T'Challa, aka Black Panther, and he's really, really fantastic. I love his take on Black Panther in this universe, and I'm super excited to watch the Black Panther film for the podcast for sure. So just kind of going through the cast list here real quick before we get into all the fun segments we have today. So like I said, Tony Stark, Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. returns. He's great in here. He gets a lot to do. Originally, he was only going to have a smaller part in this movie, but then as he arrived on set and the story was kind of unfolding, he's like, I kind of feel like Tony needs to be more involved, and it needs to be Tony versus Cap. And then that's how he kind of became a big central piece of this. And then, like I said, Steve Rogers, Captain America, played by Chris Evans once again. He is on the other side, so you have the two teams, Team Cap, Team Tony. Me personally, I I'm probably on the side of Team Cap. I don't think the Avengers need to answer to the government. Uh, real world stuff aside, I don't think the government really needs to be involved in superhero stuff. It's they're doing what they think is right. They're going to be able to get to things faster. They have the it's how do I put these in the words? They're doing the jobs that we just can't. They have abilities, they have skills, they have knowledge that makes them not necessarily superior to the government, but being able to get the shit done. And that's why I'm on the Team Cap. Like, what if there is something going on in the world that the government, you're waiting approval for the government, they're like, nah, we don't see it as a big importance. But in reality, it is. In the Avengers' eyes, that is important. Our mission is to save the world. So if you don't let us save the world, then what's the point here? So I'm more on the side of Cap, because it's just the government does not need to be involved with the Avengers. Now, I get it. There's been, destruction. There's been death through all this stuff. But it's really not their fault. The Battle of New York, they had an alien invasion. Like, that's just what it's going to sound really insensitive of me to say, but unfortunately, that's what happens in a war zone, especially when an alien invasion happens. People end up getting hurt, end up getting killed, and it's something that you can try to avoid, but it will happen, and that whole thing is not really. It's not like the Avengers brought the alien invasion to Earth. They were trying to stop it. Now, Vision kind of makes a decent argument to this where Thanos found out about the Avengers on Earth and saw them as a threat. So that challenges Thanos to send his army to Earth to destroy the Avengers. So, I mean, in that perspective, sure, maybe the Avengers inadvertently were the result of the alien invasion, but they didn't cause it. They tried to save it. Now, as far as the Sokovia Accords, what happened in Sokovia in Age of Ultron, now you have a little bit better argument that the Avengers caused that, which they did. Tony and Bruce built Ultron. He got loose. He became sentient, and he caused havoc around the world. That, I get it. Tony creating Ultron, not a good idea, but how else is he supposed to know that this thing was going to become sentient within a matter of minutes? It's kind of a unfortunate accident in a way. Like, he couldn't really predict how quickly this super AI was going to become sentient, and it just kind of was more than he can handle. I know it's a bad argument, but that is what it. And then, of course, with the Lagos explosion in this movie particularly, which was kind of the last straw to break the camel's back. I mean, there again, they were trying to save everybody from Rumlow, aka Crossbones, and Wanda, being inexperienced that she is, she had the best mindset. She thought she was saving everybody and just couldn't control the explosion, and a building ended up blowing up with people inside of it. It's a terrible argument, but that is going to happen in a battle, in a war, and it sucks that happens. But I mean, she's of course new to this. She's still discovering her powers, but deep down in her heart, she felt like she was doing the right thing by saving all these people, and they were in a tough situation. And really, it's Crossbones' fault for being a jackass and being the villain and trying to murder everybody with a virus. So, I mean, she kind of had to do what she had to do to stop that threat. It's, save a few or save the world. And she kind of wanted to do both, but it ended up blowing up in her face, literally, no pun intended. But I'm on the side of, long story short, I'm on the side of Team Cap. They have the world's best interests at heart. They put their lives on the line. Like, nobody asked them to do this. They decided to form the Avengers to protect the world from not only people on Earth, but from now in space, because we have Thanos and all that. So I'm on Team Cap. I'll post a poll on social media, and you guys can vote on which side you are, Team Cap or Team Tony. But I am definitely Team Cap in this situation. Spider-Man. So we get Peter Parker joining the MCU, and he's played by Tom Holland, who I absolutely love. I've started to really, really love him as an actor. He's been in a ton of stuff since becoming Spider-Man, but this was a dream role for him. I remember watching the interviews that he had when they announced that he was going to become Spider-Man, and this was a dream of his to become Spider-Man and to honor Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. And he does a fantastic job in here. He's got the look, he's got the charisma, he's got the agility. Like he does a lot of his own stunts because he took gymnastics when he was younger, and he trained a lot for this role. Yeah, he's fantastic as Peter. Wanda Maximoff, we have Elizabeth Olsen returning. She, again, like I said, she's still kind of understanding her powers. She is now, most of the film, she's under lockdown because of the explosion in Lagos at the beginning of the film. So she's feeling really down on herself and really confused and conflicted. And she's just kind of in survival mode at this point. Then we have Vision, played by Paul Bettany once again. And they have kind of formed this bond together, which eventually, they fall in love. And this is kind of where it starts, and then it really picks up in Infinity War, and then we get WandaVision, the first project post Endgame in the MCU. And Vision ends up, agreeing with Tony because he's thinking it from an analytical side, where he has that really good line. I'm kind of stepping on favorite quotes right here, where, our very strength incites challenge incites conflict, and conflict breeds catastrophe, which I kind of talked about already, where Thanos realized that the Avengers were a threat on Earth, so that's why he sent the aliens to Earth, was to stop the threat, which is the Avengers. And in a lot of comic books, that's kind of the basis behind a lot of these villains, where there's a hero, and somebody's like, that hero is a piece of crap, I need to stop him. Perfect example is Superman, where Lex Luthor sees Superman as a threat, but in reality, Superman's the hero. He's protecting the world, but that's not where Lex Luthor sees it, which, so Superman was created, which then in turn creates Lex Luthor, and that's where you get the villain there. I hope I hope I explained that right. So that's basically what Vision is trying to say. Tony became Iron Man. So then that spawned Whiplash. That spawned the Mandarin coming out. Same thing with Cap. Cap was brought into the modern world, and that brought on. What's a good example here? I guess in the reverse would be in the first Captain America movie, where Red Skull was already a thing, which means they had to create Captain America in order to battle it. Well, it ends up in catastrophe. World War II was already breaking out, but Johann Schmidt, who was Red Skull in the first movie, wanted to annihilate the world. So the Allies had to get really, really crazy and make their own superhero to face up against him. So it's kind of in the reverse there. It's kind of cool that they did that. But anyways, long rant gone. Vision is kind of like the analytical guy, Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson, my gal, returns, and she's great. She's really conflicted in this movie because she's gotten really close with Cap. She sees him as a really good friend, but then she also agrees with Tony's side of it, where maybe we do need to kind of take accountability for ourselves. She's got a lot of history and a lot of red in her ledger, as they like to repeat in this universe. So she tries to stick close to the government side of it so that they don't come after her and imprison her for all the crap that she's done. So she's kind of in survival mode too with Wanda. But on the other side of it, Clint Barton, a.k.a. Hawkeye, he returns, played by Jeremy Renner once more. The kind of story with him is he's kind of just retired at this point, but then he is forced out of retirement once he finds out that there is a civil war breaking out of the Avengers. He has one of my favorite lines in the film, and I'll save that for the favorite quote segment because I don't want to touch on that too much. But he has one of my favorite lines in the movie. Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, played by Paul Rudd once more. Like I mentioned already, he has already joined the Avengers after having his first movie come out right before this one. So that's cool to see him already interacting with the Avengers. And then we have newcomer T'Challa, aka Black Panther from Wakanda. He's played by Chadwick Boseman. Rest in peace, Mr. Boseman, who unfortunately passed away after Endgame came out. He's terrific. I love the costume. I love the character. I love the performance by Chadwick. He's really cool. I thought Black Panther was a great addition here. A great way to introduce the Wakandan side of the Marvel Universe. Really, really awesome. Bucky Barnes, Winter Soldier, played by Sebastian Stan once more. He's starting to become the old Bucky again. He unfortunately gets reactivated in here as the Winter Soldier from Zemo with the secret passcode phrases that activates the Winter Soldier inside of him that the Russians put in him. But he's really cool. He's got some really cool stuff too. I love that scene when he gets introduced to Spider-Man for the first time, where he throws his punch with his metal arm, and Spider-Man catches it like it was nothing, and you can feel the force that stopped his metal arm, and Spider-Man has that great line of, "Wow, you have a metal arm? That is awesome, dude." It's really cool to see Bucky back in here. Sam Wilson, aka Falcon, played by once again Anthony Mackie. He's great in here. He's starting to become a pretty important part of the Avengers. He is on the Cap side, obviously. James Rhodes, aka War Machine, comes back. Once again, played by John Cheadle. He unfortunately gets the biggest shit end of the stick in this movie, where he gets paralyzed after his unfortunate demise at the awesome battle at the airport scene. That scene still hits me. You know, the way that Robert Downey performed that scene was fantastic, where he realizes that Vision shot Rhodey in the chest, and he's falling, and you hear Don Cheadle go, "Tony, I'm flying dead stick," which means that he has no control. He's just basically free falling to the earth. And you have this really emotional moment where Tony realizes that his best friend might die here, and he's screaming Rhodes, and it's a very awesome performance by Robert Downey Jr. when he realizes that his best friend is about to die. And then you get that another emotional scene where he's holding Rhodey on the ground, and Sam Wilson walks up, and you can see, and Anthony Mackie plays this very well too, where you can actually see the guilt and the grief that Sam feels, and you can barely hear him, but he goes, "I'm sorry," like very sincerely, and Tony just kind of sits there, and he's pissed off, and then he just blasts him with his handgun, and just throws Anthony Mackie on his ass. It's a very emotional moment, and Don Cheadle, Anthony Mackie, and Robert Downey Jr. performed it very terrifically. It's great. The villain of the show, well, the real villain of the movie is Baron Zemo, played by Daniel Bruhl, who is a very incredible German actor. I've seen him in a few things. I believe he was in Inglourious Bastards, and if I remember right, there was one other one, Rush, with fellow Marvel hero Chris Hemsworth. That was the racing one. But he's great as Baron Zemo. We get to see him more in the Falcon and Winter Soldier show, and I hope to see more of him in the future. He's really great. I love him. Everett Ross, played by Martin Freeman. So we get Martin Freeman to join the MCU here. He is working with the CIA to kind of contain this civil war that's going on with the Avengers. We get to see him more too down the line. Then we get another Ross in here, a more familiar Ross. That is Secretary of State now, Thunderbolt Ross, played by the late William Hurt. Rest in peace, William Hurt as well. He comes in to basically spank the Avengers on their ass. And he's like, "Hey, stop it. You know, you guys have caused all this destruction. Sign the accords. Report to me. And you guys can still be heroes." And this is kind of where Cap is like, "I've had enough. We can't have oversight from the government. We have to be able to make our own choices and to decide when we need to go and when we don't, so but he's great in here as well. Aunt May, we get to introduce to the MCU's version of Aunt May, played by the fabulous Marissa Tomei. I love her as Aunt May in this universe, and we get this introduction. We get this kind of interesting flirtation that Tony tries to do on her, trying to be, the step uncle to Peter Parker, which is funny because Marissa Tomei and Robert Downey Jr. used to date, so there's some of that chemistry still there on screen, but she's terrific as Aunt May. And then the last one we'll talk about is, of course, Rumlow, a.k.a. Crossbones, played by Frank Grillo once more. He's only in the first part of the film, and then he, gets killed by Wanda. But it's cool to bring him back as kind of a connection to the Winter Soldier movie. As we saw, he had a freaking building fall on his face, like he says. But he's great in here. I'm not too familiar with the Crossbones character, but from what I understand, like the way he looks in here is way different than in the comics. But it's pretty cool where he's got, this exosuit that makes him be able to go toe to toe with Cap. And then, of course, he's got the helmet on to cover his disfigured face, which kind of looks like his costume in the comics. At least the face part does. But I still really like the costume in here. It's pretty cool. And it makes a lot of sense to put him in an exosuit because, well, one, he had a building drop on him. And two, he's got to be able to fight the super soldier, Bucky and Cap. So that's the whole cast there. It's quite a long list. Then we have the directors, Joe and Anthony Russo, who we talked about on the Winter Soldier episode. They're great. This is where they really showcase their abilities and is the main reason why Foggy gave them Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, because they show that they are able to not only do a standalone film, but they're also able to handle a quote-unquote Avengers-like movie. So this was kind of like their audition tape for the Avengers films, and now they are the guys to handle Avengers film. Like, it's so great to have them come back for Doomsday and Secret Wars, because I honestly can't see anybody else pulling off an Avengers movie than them. I know they're kind of at an advantage because there's two of them, but they're one of my favorite directors. Like, I'll watch anything that their name is on it, even if they just produced it or wrote it. Like, I absolutely love them. They did a fantastic job on this movie, and because they were directors is a huge reason why it's Marvel's most popular, most successful film, but it's one of my favorite Marvel films as well. It's one of my favorite superhero movies of all time too. It's really awesome. They do such a great job directing this film and the Avengers movies coming afterwards. All right, so we'll get into some of the fun segments that I thought about doing on the show. So we, of course, we have our normal ones: iconic scenes, favorite quotes, fun facts. But I also wanted to do a comic versus film one. I picked the top biggest 5 differences. I think there's actually there was a long list of 15 or 20. That's going to make this podcast, this episode 2 hours long. So I wanted to cut it down to the top 5 that I think are the biggest ones that I want to talk about. And then we'll talk about a little bit of the expanding of the MCU as well, with the 2 big characters that they introduced in this movie. So Civil War, comics versus film. So the first one was really, how did the Civil War kick off? What was the incident that sparked this? Well, in the comic, it was Nitro, who is this villain in the comic, literally explodes and kills 600 civilians, as well as this superhero group called the New Warriors, who I'm not too familiar with. I only really know them from the Civil War comic because that's one of my favorite comics of Marvel. So it's kind of similar to the film too, but the film really kind of takes the entire universe so far as a reason. So you have the Battle of New York in Avengers 1. You have Hydra taking over S.H.I.E.L.D. in the Winter Soldier, which wasn't the Avengers' fault anyways. I don't understand why they see that as a reason to make the Accords. superheroes didn't have that's on Shield. Shield allowed infiltration. Maybe you should tighten up Shield a little bit. Then you have the events of Sokovia of Age of Ultron, which, like I said, kind of hard not to agree on that one. Tony literally creates a killer robot, so that one is pretty airtight. And then you have the Lagos one, which, like I said, Wanda thought she was doing what was best. It just happens to kind of get out of control, and people end up dying. Not 600 people, which is a huge number, but I mean, quite a few die in Sokovia. So if you kind of come, and obviously the Battle of New York. So I mean, if you combine those, it's in the thousands of people, that are injured and dead. So, but those are the differences between kicking off the Civil War from the comic to the film. Doing the way that the comic book did, you would have to introduce another superhero team. You'd have to introduce another villain. Like, it's just they did the smart thing of keeping it within the universe that they're building, and so it made sense to change that. The conflict itself, so it's kind of the same, but it's still quite different. So in the comic, you have what they call the Superhero Registration Act, which actually includes the mutants, which at this point in the MCU, we haven't been introduced to mutants yet because legally they couldn't. So that's why they kind of shied away from the Superhero Registration Act, because I think in the future, once we get introduced to the X-Men, I think Kevin Feige is going to want to rebrand the Soviet Accords and introduce the Superhero Registration Act, which I think, now I don't think I've ever mentioned this on the podcast before, and I haven't really introduced this idea at all. It's something that I've kind of kept close to the vest until now. I think Kevin Feige and Marvel are going to try to do Civil War 2 eventually. So I think once they get the X-Men, pretty well weaved into the MCU, I think they're going to try to do Civil War 2, where they introduce the actual Superhero Registration Act from the comics, which basically says that every superhero in the world will reveal their secret identities. But it's kind of tricky because as we've gone through the MCU, there really isn't a whole lot of secret identities. The only one is really Spider-Man. But eventually, Peter ends up revealing that he is Spider-Man. So then you have the events of No Way Home, which is kind of where I got this idea from, where since Doctor Strange made everybody forget Peter was Spider-Man, they could go this route where nobody knows who Spider-Man is. Not even the Avengers know who Spider-Man is because he's such a young kid and they wanted to protect him. Not even the Avengers do. So that's why I'm thinking they're going to do a rebrand of the Sokovia Accords down the road once we get the X-Men and all the mutants settled, because I think Kevin Feige will want to reintroduce the Superhero Registration Act as it actually happens in the comics. Also, on top of that, S.H.I.E.L.D. ends up hunting down the unmasked superheroes that refuse to sign it. So then S.H.I.E.L.D. ends up becoming kind of the villain in that storyline. Whereas the film, like I keep saying, they called it the Sokovia Accords because, well, there is no real secret identities in here right now. And they wanted to name it after Sokovia because that's kind of what really kickstarted this whole thing was Ultron being released on the world and everything that happened in Age of Ultron. So they're kind of this, they at least kind of kept with that storyline a little bit, where they forced the superheroes to sign some kind of law that the government wrote up, but it's still pretty different. Now, it was really different, just like the incident that kicked off the comic book, is the actual villain. So in the comic, Zemo is not in here at all. There is no puppet master pulling the strings. This is an actual fight over ideals between Cap and Tony. Like, this is truly just a matter of argumentation. There is no outside, no third party that drove a wedge between them. This was strictly different views on this Registration Act. Whereas in the film, we have Baron Zemo, who basically wants to rip the Avengers apart, and he comes up with this plan that, hey, what's the best way to destroy one of the most superpowered groups in the world? You turn them on each other. You make them tear the organization from within. So that's really smart. That's why I really, really like the Zemo character in this movie, because he did it in such a strategic and villainous way to essentially try to win this. Now in the comics, he's a little different. In the comics, he's actually a Hydra Nazi, whereas in the film, he is a Sokovian colonel who lost his family and he blames the Avengers for it. Which, again, he's not wrong, because Tony built the killer robot that destroyed Sokovia and killed his family. So, I mean, the guy has a good point there. But in the comics, he's a Hydra Nazi guy that ends up becoming Zemo. Next is the Enforcers. In the comics, S.H.I.E.L.D., they enforce the Superhero Registration Act, and they hunt down anybody that didn't sign it. Whereas in the film, it's really just Secretary of State Ross and this UN committee that he has formed to enforce the Sokovia Accords. So it's a little bit different, but kind of the same. And then lastly, I wanted to mention the teams, So Team Cap and Team Iron Man. So Team Cap. In the film, it's Hawkeye, it's Ant-Man, it's Winter Soldier, Wanda, and Falcon. But in the comic, it's different heroes, such as Vision is in there, but it's the young Avengers version. Before Civil War broke out, the original version of Vision was killed. And then we have Black Panther, who joins Cap, actually. And then also in the comics, Wanda and Hawkeye aren't in Civil War because of the events of Avengers Dismembered, I think is which one it was called. One of the Avengers comics leading up to this was the reason why they weren't put into Civil War. So there's a big difference between the teams here. And then Team Iron Man, in the film, of course, we have Black Widow, who ends up joining Team Cap anyways. Spider-Man, War Machine, Vision, and Black Panther. In the comics, he actually has a mixture of heroes and villains. I actually think Venom joins his team, if I remember right. But he has heroes like Mr. Fantastic, and then villains like Yellow Jacket from Ant-Man. Now, I think, if I remember right in the comics, Spider-Man is actually on Team Cap's side. I want to make sure I verify that, because eventually in Civil War 2, it's Team Spider-Man and Team Captain Marvel. But I want to get this right, because I'm pretty sure Spider-Man is on Team Cap. When Spider-Man first swung... Nope, that's the movie. I want the comic. Oh... I'm pretty sure he joined. I can't find it here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Spider-Man joined Cap's team, which is a huge difference from the comic to the film. But so those are the differences that I thought were interesting between the comic, Civil War, and the film. Civil War is one of my favorite comics of Marvel. It's right there next to the Infinity Gauntlet. Now, expanding the MCU. We kind of touched on this a little bit with Ant-Man last time on the show, because that was a character that they really did expand it. I mean, they expanded it so much that we're in a different city, San Francisco. Black Panther really introduces an entirely new country, which is cool, Wakanda. So this really opens up the universe on top of, Guardians of the Galaxy in space. I already mentioned Ant-Man. Now we're getting Spider-Man in Queens, and he kicks off a whole slew of movies. We have the 4th Spider-Man movie coming out this year, and then Black Panther, which across, the world, we have an entirely new culture we're introduced. So it's really awesome that they didn't overload audiences, but they gave it enough time and enough care to introduce these origins of these really, really popular characters in Marvel. Now, of course, we don't get to see Peter get bit by the spider, which I think was smart because we already saw that with Toby and with Andrew Garfield. Maybe in the fourth, maybe in Brand New Day, we get some flashbacks on how he got bit by a spider. But they did a really good job in here where he's like talking to Tony and he's like, well, I've had these powers for 6 months and I'm still learning on how I can be a hero in the world. And then he kind of leaves it out on how he did it because, like I said, Kevin Feige realized that we all know the origins of Spider-Man. He got bit by a spider. That's how he got it. We don't need to see it. We don't need to hear it 100 times. We already know the story. I'm sure we're going to eventually get some flashbacks on Tom Holland's Peter getting bit by a spider because I'm kind of curious on what that would look like. I want to see Kevin Feige's and the MCU's version of him getting bit by a spider. So I hope they do have some kind of flashback. But yeah, expanding the MCU again, Civil War, on top of all the other characters they still manage to expand this universe even more with two of Marvel's most popular heroes. Moving on, we've got the iconic scenes. Again, these are scenes that first come to mind when you hear the title of the movie, Captain America Civil War. I tried to keep this down to 5 because we're going to be here all day. So the first one, Tony stops the bullet for Winter Soldier. This is one of my favorite moments in the entire MCU movie. So we've got Bucky, who's been activated by Zemo through the secret passcodes in Russian. So now the Winter Soldier's running loose around this facility. So Tony, I love his line where he's like, I'm a non-combatant. Like, this is the only suit I have. I have a 3-piece suit. But luckily, he's got his watch that he's able to transform into the Iron Man glove. So he's got a few little tricks up his sleeve to slow down Bucky. Well, then he gets this idea of confronting Bucky, which is stupid because he's a super soldier and he doesn't have his Iron Man suit. And Bucky has the gun pointed at him, and he holds the gun, fires, and you can feel that. I love that moment where you hear the gun go off and you feel it, and Tony's like shocked, like, holy shit, did I just die? No, he caught it. And it was really cool how Robert Downey played it because he was kind of surprised that he caught it. His technology was able to stop a freaking bullet. That's pretty cool. So I always think of that scene. The one that everybody's probably going to pick, and it's the most iconic scene in Marvel, in superhero movies, in Hollywood in general, and that is Steve Rogers curling a helicopter. You know that scene where you get the giant biceps and he's holding a freaking helicopter? That is the most iconic scene in the MCU by far. And he did that practically too. Like, he pumped a bunch of weights off the camera and he literally curled whatever prop that they had there to replicate the chopper, and he was really flexing and using his muscle strength. So that was really cool. Peter meeting Tony is a great moment in that tiny little apartment with Aunt May, and they're having this conversation. Tony asks him the big question: why are you Spider-Man? And that's when Peter tells the story. I've had these powers for 6 months. I want to make a difference in the world. I want to put these powers to use. They were given to me for a reason, and I want to use them. And then Tony goes like, you want to help the little guy. You want to, you want to protect the streets. He goes, yeah, I want to protect the little guy. Like, he's been bullied all his life, and now he gets to stand up to the bullies. So it was a really cool moment. And, watching these movies now and knowing what happens where Tony ends up becoming a mentor and a father figure to Peter, it really starts in this moment here, and it's really, really cool. Then we have the giant airport battle scene, which is one of the greatest battles in all of Marvel history. You get giant Ant-Man, which is great. I love Spider-Man's reaction to that, where he's like, holy shit, and you just get Scott Lang laughing in that giant Ant-Man voice. You get Cap going up against Iron Man. You get Cap going against Spider-Man, which is a great moment. You have Hawkeye and Scarlett Johansson going at it. You've got Bucky and Vision flying around, or Rhodey and Vision flying around. You have that moment between Black Panther and Hawkeye where Hawkeye's like, "Hey, I'm Clint. We haven't met," and Black Panther's just like, "I don't care who you are. I'm gonna kill you." So it's an awesome, awesome battle scene. I could put that on repeat and still be entertained every time. It's really, really, really awesome. And then we have the last one, Tony versus Cap and Bucky at the very end, where Tony finds out that Bucky killed his parents on a mission while he was being activated by the Winter Soldier. Turns out Cap knew what happened to his parents, but he didn't know it was Bucky. He just knew that somebody hunted down his parents and killed them, and then took that super soldier serum from him. And that's a really, really tough scene to watch. You have Tony just watching this old ass camera, his old ass TV, and he's watching his mom get strangled to death by the man just right next to him. I mean, I don't blame Tony for acting the way that he does. I probably would have acted the way I did if I just watched my mom and dad get brutally murdered right in front of me, and the guy is in the same room as me. My psyche would break beyond repair, and it's a great battle. You get that iconic shot of Tony, blasting his beams, and Cap blocking it with his shield. It's the Civil War comic cover, and of course the Russo brothers have to put that in there somewhere. But it's great. It's incredible. I love that fight. So this movie has a lot of great scenes, but those 5 I think are the most iconic. That's when you hear that title, that is what it is. The quotes was tough, but I tried to limit it. I think I have 2, 4, 6, I have 8 of them. There was easily like 20 or 30 I could have put in here. So first one from Spider-Man. You have a metal arm. That is awesome, dude. I already talked about that one when he catches Bucky's arm. You can feel that punch. That's how great that scene is. Tony Stark, that shield doesn't belong to you. You don't deserve it. My father made that shield. That's such a cold line, but it's such a great moment between these two characters that were like best friends. And Tony is just so pissed off and so disappointed in Cap, and he's just throwing shades at him, and Cap's like, all right, I'll leave it. It's such a great moment. From Hawkeye, I retired for like 5 minutes, and it all goes to shit. As he comes back to the compound, you got Wanda under house arrest. Vision is kind of like her bodyguard / watcher. I love the Hawkeye line. Iron Man, do you even remember them? And then this is from Winter Soldier. I remember all of them. Like, it's great. Like Tony asked him, like, do you even remember killing my parents? And then that's where you get that realization that Bucky remembers all of them. Even when he was under the command as Winter Soldier, Bucky was still inside. He was watching this happen. He remembers killing all those people, even the innocent ones. And it's, oh my God, it's such an incredible moment. This one from T'Challa. Vengeance has consumed you. It's consuming them. I'm done letting it consume me. Obviously talking about how his dad died in that explosion at the UN committee, which was caused by Zemo. And that's why he's been hunting Bucky, because he was under the assumption that Bucky killed his dad. But it turns out that it was Zemo, and he was so blind by vengeance that he didn't bother to listen to Cap or look at the evidence. And he was just on this warpath, and he finally realizes what has occurred. It has destroyed the Avengers. It's just going to destroy him, and he has to be a better person, a better king, a better superhero, and he has to realize that I can't let vengeance consume me. I have to do what is right. It's a great moment. This one from Vision, I already mentioned it, but I'll mention it again. Our very strength incites challenge, challenge incites conflict, and conflict breeds catastrophe. Kind of a foreshadowing of Thanos, but also you can kind of look at a lot of the villains that were created in the Marvel universe as a result of the hero becoming the hero. Challenge. This is another one from Iron Man. I don't care. He killed my mom. That's such a cold line, and Robert Downey Jr. performs it so well, where where Cap is just begging Tony. He didn't know, man. He was under mind control, and then Tony's just like, I don't care. He killed my mom. Like, it's such a cold line, and like I said, I probably would have reacted the same way. And then this last one, from War Machine. Congratulations, Cap. You're a criminal. I like that one. I like that moment. It's like dun 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 dun. When they arrest Cap and Falcon. I forgot one line in here, and I just remembered it. Another one from War Machine, or technically it was Stan Lee, in his cameo, but then you also get the aftermath. So where in this one, Stan Lee's cameo is the FedEx guy, and he's knocking on the door, and he's like, "Is there a Tony Stank?" And it's just an ongoing joke, and Rhodey's just like, "Table for two for Mr. Stank." Put him next to the bathrooms. Like, I had to at least mention that line. It's a great line, but I like this one too, where Rhodey's like, "You're a criminal, Cap. How does that feel?" Such great lines in there. Fun facts. We're gonna whip through these here. There was a lot to sift through. A lot of it had to do with the extended cast and getting everybody back and different storylines that they were monkeying with. So I try to keep it down to some interesting ones here that weren't just casting rumors and changing stories. The day before filming a fight scene with Robert Downey Jr., Sebastian Stan sent him a video of himself doing intense bicep curls in front of a decapitated Iron Man head. A decapitated head of an Iron Man suit. So that was really cool. He attached the message, "Looking forward to our scene tomorrow, Robert," which of course meaning when they fought at the end of the movie with him and Cap and Bucky. T'Challa had a much smaller role in the earlier drafts and did not even appear in costume, as the writers intended to put more focus on Spider-Man and save Black Panther's origin for his own movie. Makes sense. However, when it looked like Marvel would not be getting permission to use Spider-Man, Black Panther's role was beefed up significantly, as you see in the movie. By the time they did get to use Spider-Man, T'Challa had already become so integral to the plot that they decided to leave his role as is and give Spider-Man a smaller part. Kind of sucks as a Spider-Man fan, but totally get it. That whole Sony Marvel thing is such a mess and so convoluted. I really, really hope Marvel gets the entire rights to Spider-Man. Like, I talk about this numerous times on the podcast, and I stand by it even today. Sony does not know how to handle Spider-Man. Marvel had to step in, and they gave us the best Spider-Man version ever on live action. They need to just hand over the rights. They're not doing themselves any favor. They're losing money. They need to cut their losses. They need to accept defeat and just sell Marvel Spider-Man. Make some money back, because Sony can't make a movie to save their life. It's just Marvel needs Spider-Man. It's going to be so much easier, so much relief off of Kevin Feige's shoulders when he can just acquire Spider-Man finally. Like, it's going to be great. On the topic of Spider-Man was very nearly removed from the film, as Sony Pictures originally rejected Marvel's proposal to allow them a cut of the profit if they could pull Spider-Man over. Despite the disappointment over the financial returns and critical reception of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I don't agree with. Spider-Man 2 is a good movie. The Sony Corporation was still planning to expand their own Spider-Man universe with a Sinister Six spin-off film, Venom, and The Amazing Spider-Man 3, which they ended up trashing because they're idiots. Venom was pretty good. I enjoyed it. The Sinister Six film would have been great within the Amazing Spider-Man universe, but they would have found some way to botch it. However, when the latter fell through, like I said, they axed Amazing Spider-Man 3. After Sony parted ways with Spider-Man performer Andrew Garfield, which was bullshit, they shafted the crap out of him. They decided to renegotiate the deal with Marvel again because they're idiots and they realize that they can't make a movie other than Andrew Garfield's movies and Tobey Maguire's movies. They did a good job on the Amazing Spider-Man movies. I will die on that hill. I think Spider-Man 2 is a good movie. It's a very entertaining movie. I like it better than the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, so come at me. And I would have loved an Amazing Spider-Man 3 film. I think it was an overreaction. Now, granted, if they wouldn't have overreacted, we wouldn't have gotten Tom Holland. So I'm okay with that. But they overreacted with the Amazing Spider-Man 2, and they should have given Andrew Garfield a third take on it. The way they went about this sucks because Andrew Garfield loved the character. He always wanted to play Spider-Man, and he finally got the opportunity to do it, and he killed it. He was great. I love his Spider-Man. I love his Peter. Well, his Peter Parker, not so much. I love his Spider-Man. But yeah, they really shafted Garfield on there. But hey, we got Tom Holland out of it. No CGI was used during the highway chase scene when Bucky commandeers a moving motorcycle from under its rider. The whole stunt was performed practically. That's pretty sick. In the film, the Falcon utilizes a Falcon drone called Red Wing. In the mainstream Marvel comics, Red Wing was an actual Falcon, which was Sam Wilson's sidekick. Yeah, there's no way Kevin Feige was going to put a real Falcon on there. It was going to be a drone. You got to modernize it a little bit. It's going to be kind of. We already have Rocket Raccoon and Groot. We don't need a Falcon flying around. Sebastian Stan packed on 35 pounds of muscle for the film, boosting his weight from 165 pounds to a solid, muscular 200 pounds. Attaboy there, Stan. Tom Holland made an audition tape together with John Bernthal while filming Pilgrimage, with Holland landing the role of Peter Parker, a.k.a. Spider-Man, and, of course, John Bernthal having the role of Frank Castle, a.k.a. the Punisher, in the Daredevil show, which was, at that time, on Netflix. So those two have been really great buds, and I'm super excited to see them team up together in the new Spider-Man movie. It's going to be awesome. The Black Panther costume is a combination of a practical costume and visual effects. Although Spider-Man's suit was composed of CGI for every scene, a physical prototype Spider-Man suit was built during production that Tom Holland wore on set during some of the filming. It wasn't until later that the filmmakers decided to scrap the suit entirely and replace it with the CGI version. The prototype suit differed from the final product on screen as it featured raised webbing and a classic spider symbol, which was very reminiscent of the symbol shown in the very first Spider-Man comic released in 1962. I'm not a fan of CGI costumes, so this very disappointing. And it didn't look great. Like, I don't know if it's just me or maybe it was my TV, but that scene where Tony comes back from the fight and Peter's kind of like passed out and he finally wakes him up and the mask is like half off his face. It didn't look great. Like, I don't have a lot of bad things to say about this movie, but that CGI looked bad on the suit. I wish they would have used the practical suit. And then the last fun fact I have here, Joe Russo is actually featured in the movie. He's one of the directors, of course. He was the murdered Dr. Theo Broussard. Sorry, I probably butchered that name. Who was killed by Baron Zemo. He was the one laying in the bathtub in the hotel where that lady found him. Baron Zemo took his identity and posed as him. That was actually the director, Joe Russo, who likes to throw himself into a lot of his projects. Anthony Russo does it too, but this one was Joe. I love it when directors put themselves in their project. Makes them show that they actually care. So yeah, those are the fun facts. Great movie. I can't say it enough. Captain America: Civil War is one of my favorite Marvel movies. They did such a great job at, juggling all these characters, tackling a very iconic storyline in the comics, changing it to fit the MCU, the version of the Marvel universe that they're telling in live action, while also paying respect and homage to a lot of the comic book stories. We get the introduction of Tom Holland, which is incredible. I love him as Spider-Man. We get T'Challa, a.k.a. Black Panther, in here, which is great. Love Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther. This is just an incredible movie. I love rewatching it. We talked about it already in the first year of the podcast, so this is actually a rewatch, but we're doing it again on the show because I just absolutely love this movie. If you haven't seen this movie in a while, go and watch it today because It's one of the best superhero movies ever made. I absolutely love it. Let's wrap up the show like we always do with the rankings. All right, first up, we have the MCU ranking. I have Captain America Civil War at number 7. So it is in the top 10. We'll refresh the top 10 here. So at number 10, I've got Guardians of the Galaxy, which you've already covered on the show. Incredible film. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which we'll get to eventually. My favorite Guardian movie. Terrific. Number 8, Spider-Man Far From Home. I think that's a very underrated Spider-Man movie. There's a lot of valid points on why it's a pretty weak film, but I love it because I just love Tom Holland's Spider-Man. And I do think it's a good movie, so it's at number 8. 7, that's where I have Civil War. 6 right above it, The Winter Soldier. I love Winter Soldier. I said it numerous times on that episode. I love The Winter Soldier as a superhero movie, as a spy espionage film. It's a lot like The Dark Knight. Now, The Dark Knight I think is a better film, but I kind of put them in the same realm as each other, as kind of changing what a superhero movie can be, and just kind of changing how people see them. It's a really, really well made movie. Number 5, Spider-Man Homecoming. I can't wait to do Homecoming. I love that movie so much. Number 4, Avengers Endgame. I mean, you already know why this is top 5. Endgame is freaking awesome. Infinity War, which is might be a really hot take, but I think Infinity War is a better movie than Endgame. I really like Infinity War. I like what it did. I like it. It's just fantastic. I love it. Number 2, Spider-Man No Way Home, which was my favorite Marvel movie, one of my favorite movies of all time, period, for the longest time, until Deadpool and Wolverine came at number 1. Now, Spider-Man is still my favorite character in Marvel, my favorite superhero. I love No Way Home. But Daredevil and Wolverine just did something special, and I love Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds finally being on screen, and it was just terrific. It's incredible. I can't wait to rewatch that for Marvel Friday. So those are the MCU rankings. Again, Captain America Civil War comes in at number 7. The villain scale. Again, as a reminder, this is where we rate the villain of the movie based on the performance by the actor, the costume, and the motivation behind his villainous or her villainous. The costume. It sucks that they didn't use the comic book version. Eventually, we do get it in Falcon and Winter Soldier. But I get it. He's kind of wearing disguises a lot. And we want to put a face to the name instead of having him wear that purple mask the whole time. But I wish the final act of the film would have had him put his costume on from the comics. I think that would have been great. Because as we see in the Falcon and Winter Soldier, Daniel Bruhl looks great in the iconic costume, and the way that they designed it was cool. So I kind of wish. So it kind of knocked it down a little bit for me. The performance by Daniel Bruhl is freaking incredible. I love that scene where he is at the facility and he's reading those words, those key phrases to activate the Winter Soldier and Bucky's brain. And of course, Daniel Bruhl being German, he's got a really cool accent. He spoke really good Russian when he performed that scene. I really, really like his performance. He was really, really great. The motivation behind the character, he's kind of relatable. Like it's really good. Like he not quite on Loki's level where he's like, fan favorite, iconic, but I like the motivation. I like the writing behind his character where his family gets killed in Sokovia after that battle, and I mean, and he's not wrong. Tony built Ultron. Ultron destroyed Sokovia. His family died because of the results of that battle. Like, he has a valid grudge against the Avengers, and the way he goes about it, the masterpiece that he performs to destroy the Avengers within was just incredible. Like, it's was really thought out, really coolly, awesome, executed well. It's was really good writing around his character. I really liked it. So I'm giving him 4 Thanos heads. Couldn't quite get him to 5. The costume, not putting him in the iconic costume, really put it down for me. And like I said, it's not quite on that Loki level quite yet, but he's right there. You know, I could be persuaded like 4.5 Thanos heads, but I'm gonna stick with 4 here. But really, really awesome. I really, really like the Zemo villain in this film. Really, really great. And then lastly but not least, we have the popcorn rating. With it being in the top 10, you could probably guess what I'm going to give it. And that is the golden popcorn bucket. So top tier for one of my favorite superhero movies of all time, Captain America Civil War. Well, that's going to do our episode for this week's Marvel Friday. Coming up, we'll do the second part of the Gamerverse event with Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which I'm super excited about. The Edgar Wright film based off the Scott Pilgrim comics. And then next week, we'll kind of pivot a little bit for Marvel Friday. Wonder Man just released this week. All 8 episodes are out on Disney+. So I'm going to binge watch those. We're going to do the Wonder Man episode next week. And then after that, we'll get back to the theater release path of through the MCU with Doctor Strange. So we'll have a little gap there. I'm excited to see Wonder Man. It looks like a really cool show. I think each episode is about 30 minutes long, so it should be an easy binge with it being 8 episodes. So I'm excited to see a new character introduced into this massive universe that Disney Marvel has put together on screen. So some awesome content coming out. Also, check out my football podcasts, the End Zone Report. We've taken a little break here with the Pro Bowl going on. We're not going to do an episode for the Pro Bowl because I don't see the Pro Bowl as anything worth watching. But we will do an episode coming out next week leading up into the Super Bowl. So if you're a fan of that show, I've set up a phone number for that so you can call the show. Defend Your Pick, which is a segment that we'll be doing on there where you can call into the show. You can pick between the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots and just kind of take a few seconds to defend why you want which team to win. And then we'll do a post-Super Bowl episode just kind of reacting to Super Bowl 60 and all that fun stuff. So a lot of content from Quantum Podcast. So go ahead and check that out. Thank you for joining the show today, and we will see you all next time.